Money is the glue that holds these systems together. In the first three, money is controlled by the state and is subject to unavoidable greed and corruption. Energism is only possible with a stateless and trustless money system based on conservation of energy, and therefore value, and which is immutable, Bitcoin. Energism is a direct result and derivative property of Bitcoinization. Bitcoinization can be broken down into the societal and individual effects of Bitcoin adoption by humanity. Self-Bitcoinization is to the individual as hyper-Bitcoinization is to society. But this is not some abstract fantasy. As the hash rate and price of Bitcoin show, we are moving towards Bitcoinization at lightning speed. Although we cannot tell yet for certain, it seems ever more likely that Bitcoin supplants the current inferior, unfair system as the predominant form of value storage, unit of account, and peer-to-peer exchange mechanism for humanity. Because all money systems and empires have failed historically, it is truly time to try something new. It is time for humanity to stop blindly trusting politicians and those in power to steward and control our lives simply because they desire more power and money for themselves. These people near the top all benefit from the Cantillon Effect, which is completely unfair and unjust. The Cantillon Effect reveals a harsh reality. Newly created money doesn't spread evenly through society. Instead, it enriches those closest to the source: governments, corporations, banks, and large financial institutions, while draining purchasing power from everyone else, particularly wage earners and savers. In the current fiat system, central banks inject new money into the economy through mechanisms like quantitative easing. This money flows first into entities like banks and corporations, allowing them to spend it at pre-inflated prices. By the time it trickles down to the broader economy, the damage is done. Prices have risen, and those further down the chain face higher costs without matching income growth. The result? Wealth funnels upward. Inequality deepens, and the average person gets left behind. This is the Cantillon Effect. Bitcoin flips this script. Its fixed supply of 21 million coins and transparent decentralized issuance through mining eliminate the Cantillon Effect. New coins follow predictable, evenly distributed rules that no central authority can manipulate. Right now, 450 Bitcoin are mined every day. At the next halving, it will only be 225 new Bitcoin per day. Oh, and about 94% of the available Bitcoin has already been mined and is in circulation. Everyone operates on equal footing. Bitcoin's design fundamentally rejects arbitrary monetary expansion, offering a fairer, sounder alternative to the wild distortions of fiat currency. Critics often point out that while Bitcoin removes the Cantillon Effect, its adoption by billionaires and early movers concentrates wealth, rendering it centralized and unequal. While this observation holds merit in the short term, it overlooks the dynamic nature of Bitcoin's ecosystem and its long-term implications. Imagine a finite, immutable resource, like land, on an untouched island. Initially, a few individuals claim large portions of it. At first glance, this may seem unfair, but as the island society grows and commerce develops, these large holdings are gradually divided, sold, or shared through trade, investment, and inheritance. The same applies to Bitcoin. Although some entities may hold significant amounts of digital property early on, their wealth is not static. Over time, Bitcoin's decentralized open network encourages redistribution as these holders spend, invest, or sell their Bitcoin. Unlike fiat systems where wealth concentration is perpetuated through money printing and insider access, Bitcoin operates on transparent rules, ensuring that value flows freely within its ecosystem without favoritism. Admittedly, this may take time. And that is an excerpt from the book Self-Bitcoinization by Dr. Noah T. Kaufman. And he will be our guest on today's podcast. And let's get right into it. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to this episode of 3 Deeper Cuts podcast, and I'm grateful to have Dr. Noah Kaufman, an ER physician, businessman, and active Bitcoiner. Welcome to the podcast, Noah.
Thanks, Chuck. It's great to be here. Really appreciate it. Love your podcast.
So, at the beginning of your brand new book called Self-Bitcoinization, you talk about your experiences as a pre-med student going to Japan before you would embark on this journey. And it sounded transformative. So can you just tell us a little bit more what sparked that and what that was like?
Sure. It was really cool. What a great experience and opportunity. Actually, so I had gotten into Tulane Medical School, and I was lucky enough, they actually offered me a scholarship, like a pretty good scholarship. So, I was all lined up to go, but I really always wanted to do a trip abroad. And so I just had a summer, and I went to Japan, and I decided once I was there that I really wanted to stay. And the reason I went is I just had a bunch of friends who were Japanese, and they kept telling me how amazing it was there. And I met some really incredible people in college, and I had studied Japanese. I had a Japanese minor. So I really wanted to go and just see what it was like living in Japan. So once I was there, I had a small apartment in the countryside and a little moped, and I taught English in this school, and I was really kind of putting together this life. And after just a few months, I was like, I can't really leave. I want to learn Japanese fluently, and I want to just be more involved with this culture. And I was living in this teeny little town. I was the only, Gaikokujin, the only foreigner. And so I called up the med school and I said, hey, is there any way to defer a year? I'm in Japan. I want to continue my my studies here and learning their culture and learning the language. And the dean, who was just one of the coolest guys, Joseph Paisano, he was just, Dr. Paisano was just incredible. And he was like, well, you can do that, but you have to forfeit your scholarship.
Oh,
and,
man.
and we'll save you a place for next year. You could defer a year. And I said, okay, oh my gosh, what a decision. So I decided, I was like, whatever, YOLO, and this is more important than money. You're young, you don't have any money anyway. Future Dr. Noah can pay for all this, so I'll stay in Japan.
Yep.
And so I deferred a year, and I deferred a year in medical school, and lo and behold, the next year, they gave me the scholarship again.
Hey.
So I ended up getting the scholarship anyway, the provost scholarship or whatever, and then I matriculated over to Tulane and had a great time there. But I was able to live that time in Japan, and they would just I don't even know what they were paying me because it was in yen, and I was a kid, and they just put it into a Japanese bank account for me. And when I went to leave, it was like a ridiculous amount of money. It was, I don't even remember how much, but it was so much money. It was like almost, I was confused. I had nothing to do with it. I had no, I don't know, your views of money are different when you're younger and you don't have any.
Yes.
You can really, you're really free. I think Janis Joplin said, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. Nothing, but it's free. I'm not sure if those were her first words, but in any event, the meaning is there. So that was my experience with Japan. And I opened the book with a conversation about how I got the money out of the bank and then what I did with it. And so it was transformative.
I like the part where it was a huge pain to get that money cleared out and close out the bank account. So then you were like frustrated with the bank teller, and then you just walk right outside and go to an ATM and just clear it out. And then you basically gave it to your friends and host family while you were there. That was awesome.
Yeah, I just tucked it away into their purses and hid it in their, because they never would have taken it. So I gave like 90% of it away or some crazy amount.
Good for you.
Yeah.
But so that experience is an early capsule of some of the concepts in your book where you talk about the scarcity mindset and fiat
Yeah.
currency and the whole basically existence that we have around that versus uh, an abundance mindset. And it sounded like from your small town experiences in Japan, you were very plugged in to the community, even as a foreigner. You felt a
Yeah.
very strong sense of community and abundance and money. It's like you weren't stressed about it. You weren't checking your bank account all the time and buying a bunch of stuff that you don't need. Um, is that what got you? I mean, Bitcoin. So Bitcoin was created in 2008, 2009, right? So this would have been before that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, this was in 97,
Okay.
something like that. So, right. This was a long time ago. I mean, I finished high school in 93, finished college in 96. So that's right. And then I kind of ended up taking the year. So, yeah, what I would say is that all through my life, I've noticed, and I think that a lot of us have noticed, especially I'm 50 now, that things used to be, easier or, just, they used to be a lot more simple. There were no cell phones, there was no text, there was no social media, there was none of that. And you could, things took time. Like I wrote love letters to girlfriends.
Hell yeah.
Like I had a typewriter in college. And
Dude,
seriously.
I got an extra one for you. I got a typewriter right here. I'm all about that. Fuck yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's cool, right? Like so, I mean, it was strange to live through this. I mean, I'm sure it's strange for every generation to see how rapidly things change, but things have been changing more and more rapidly, and we're getting like hyper compression of technological advancement without us being really ready or adapted to it psychologically, I'd say. And I'd say that, it's kind of the end of the monetary system and the end of the American empire. And Ray Dalio, if you haven't read, has done some great work on this. Historically, measuring data, looking at metrics that show when empires start to go on the decline. And the American empire is on the decline. And every time an empire has been on the decline, they debase their money system and they inflate the heck out of it. They get into more and more debt. Wealth divides increase. I mean, this is like a very well studied historical, apolitical sort of academic process. And so that's been happening throughout our lifetime. And I think that when I was younger, besides the fact that I didn't have any money, people just didn't worry about money as much. Just speaking with my parents who are in their 80s now, and that generation, it was just much easier. It wasn't like both family members had to work. Houses were cheaper as a percentage of your income. So I think that there's a lot to be said for just the historical time period we're in and the challenges that come along with the natural cycle of the credit cycle and the cycle of empires. So, that's a long-winded way to say that I think money is on everybody's mind now, and it's much more serious now, and it's much more stressful, and it's creating a lot of societal rift. And I think Bitcoin appeared out of, invention or what necessity is the mother of invention. Bitcoin appeared because it was a possible solution for this. And some of us believe that it might ultimately be the solution. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not one of these religious zealots that think Bitcoin, I know I wrote a book about it.
It is a pretty spiritual book. Yeah?
It is. But I think we can achieve, what Bitcoin can help us achieve without Bitcoin. I just think that we're moving in the wrong direction, and something like Bitcoin maybe flips the script and moves us in the right direction fundamentally.
Absolutely. I think that's what attracts a lot of young people to it. Well, not just young people, but just people in general. We are frustrated. about money. We are confused. We're stressed. And I'm an early career guy, but the income that I have now is just a regular working doctor. I'm basically middle class, like I'm not like the doctors when I was a kid growing up in the 90s, uh, or late 90s, early 2000s. They all owned their own practice. It was very lucrative, as it should be. I mean, it's a high risk profession. It's intellectually and physically demanding. You're on your feet, you're running around, driving around to hospitals. But they were compensated, and they had a place in the community that was very well regarded. But with the you tie into these topics in your book, and you talk about how the scarcity mindset has basically been a virus into the craft of medicine, right? We're all operating from this scarce pot. And I tweeted at you this morning. That was some of my notes that I'm struggling with as we speak.
I saw that.
Like how can I? So we are all working in this finite pot. And you and I both know that when you're providing a service, you're increasing wealth. You're solving someone's problem. It's infinite. But
Right.
we have a system that forces us into competition. So we're like nickel and diming other specialties, like, oh, they're reducing the E&M code. Well, they shouldn't take it out of our pot. It's dumb. And we're
It's
all
dumb, yeah.
so-called educated people, but we're still squabbling over the same scarce resources that are not really scarce. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So could you just kind of elaborate? Because I know you went
Yeah.
further along and you found alternative sources of income as well.
Right. Well, first off, when I just got out of residency, I was paid so much money and houses were so cheap and food was so cheap. And my interest rate on my student loans was 1.8%. So like when I got out, I never even thought about money and the money in the account would just go up and up. I mean, it was insane. I had to okay, should I put this into stocks? What should I do? And so I started to learn. But back in my era, when I started, doctors didn't have to really worry about money. I mean, like really you could practice as much or as little as you wanted. You had way more than enough money to spend on a whatever lifestyle you want and travel and nice cars. And the money would still go up in your account. And that was really good for medicine and for patients because it made happier doctors who never had to worry about money or do extra shifts for money or get side gigs for money. And, that's all kind of crumbled and fallen apart. And the money has been sucked out of the system. I mean, as we know, physician fees only make up about 7% the cost of practicing medicine or of healthcare these days.
Yep.
And, but we're the primary value drivers and nurses and APPs and EMS. I mean, I'm just saying the deliverers of healthcare are the ones who should primarily interface with people and patients. And so imagine if we all doubled our incomes as physicians, we're much happier, much lower stressed. And it went up to, at 14% of the cost of healthcare. And then we cut the cost of healthcare in half by eliminating administrators. And then patients had to pay, 25% of what they're paying now. And they didn't need to be forced into these insurance, fraud scams. And so it's all been a crazy, it's all been like a crazy misalignment of incentives that has decayed the delivery of healthcare in this country and caused a lot of stress and broken doctors with higher suicide rates. It's not fair. It's not fair to you guys who are just out and you guys have no idea. I mean, you hear that it was great and that it was so much better. But it really, really was. It was so much easier. And, burnout was less, moral injury was less, and these things are really killing doctors, and then therefore obviously patients. And there's more administrators than ever and bureaucratic bloat, and don't even get me started on Epic, and then I heard this morning, North Carolina just passed a law that, foreign grads. Some of them I'm sure are better than a lot of US doctors, but with non-stringent, different kind of medical educations are going to be allowed to practice without passing the USMLE or practice, or uh, having a US certified residency. That's scary.
It is.
So that's continued downward pressure. And yeah, I mean, it's Chuck, it's fucking frustrating. And you're in the right place, speaking this out into the world because, and the frustration grows. I think it's growing amongst physicians, but it's just harder on new physicians who don't know what we had or how we were able to help people. And then, of course, technology's come a long way, and there's AI now, and there's all these things that are changing so rapidly. But yeah, I
No,
don't envy
absolutely. No,
someone.
and to Doc, to riff on that, so this idea of foreign medical grads coming to the U.S. and being allowed to practice without recredential or basically taking the same boards as we do. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is mostly driven by large employed model health systems, right? They most of the and private equity owned groups. Like there's a big one,
Yeah,
a big hospitalist group, and I mean, you look through the panel of newly credentialed hospitalists that are coming to your institution, and you see the ones that are in these gigantic and employed, in some cases, private equity controlled groups. They tend to be foreign medical grads, or they tend to be from medical schools that are just not top tier. That's just the way it is.
yeah,
And I also know because I trained like 50% of my residency class in St. Louis was foreign, and they're lovely human beings and excellent physicians that I trained with.
yeah,
But they also don't complain, and that's what makes them very uh, desirable to hire. When
yeah,
you see egregious ethical problems going on, like woefully understaffed medical wards for night shift, or over reliance on mid levels, they tend not to complain, right?
yeah.
And when you were starting your practice in the so early 2000s, mid 2000s, if you saw things going wrong in your health system, you wouldn't hesitate to speak up about it, right?
Oh yeah, heated meetings with admin, 100% all the time. You used to happen.
Yeah. And but as soon as you relinquish ownership and now they're the ones who are buttering your bread, the incentives change, right? Like
Yeah,
you tend to kind of let stuff slide, and it it fundamentally alters the integrity of the practice of medicine. Um,
so that's what I talk about in my in this book is like a more foundational base layer of incentive problems, because I think that this is like the natural evolution when you have incentives based on scarcity. So if people need more money, and if it's like competitive and dog eat dog, you have to do whatever you can. Well, of course, ultimately, medicine's going to become the golden goose, and the house of medicine is going to fall into the hands of people who want to make money, private equity and public equity alike, insurance companies. And, healthcare is the number one bankrupter of our citizens. And wittingly or unwittingly, as physicians, and it's even worse if it's wittingly, because, then you got to live with this. But we are violating our fundamental oath to first do no harm, because we're doing just an enormous amount of financial harm to people, and we're complicit in this system. And yes, we're kept like on arm's length. I don't know how much it costs. I don't even have any clue how much it costs to like sew up somebody's face. But I know that if it's like over 2.8 or 2.9 inches or whatever it is, or centimeters, I guess, that it's a different, higher billing rate than if it's under 2.6 or whatever it is, centimeters. And so I'm being pushed and compared to other doctors about how much revenue I'm generating by a greedy unethical system that is incentivized not to create better health outcomes, but to create more revenue and more money. It's disgusting. And being a part of it is morally injurious on a very profound level. And so, a lot of doctors don't realize that we are causing immense harm. And part of it is because we need to pay the bills and we don't know what else to do because look, I don't know how they make the money. I don't know how they collect the money. But, how apt is your patient going to be to follow your advice and care and listen? I mean, patients give up on their health because they can't afford it, and they're not going to go to the hospital because it's egregious. And so it's very hard to be a physician these days because of the harm we're doing, and it's a massive problem. And my point is, greed is a human thing that is always going to be there. But my point is that this is all a result of a flawed system that makes our money less and less valuable over time and makes things more expensive over time and makes life harder over time. Whereas the free market should make everything cheaper over time as technology makes things better and easier. So the whole thing is backwards and messed up, and we're in decline. And, I think Bitcoin is a beacon of hope. People, doctors especially, hate Bitcoin. There's a lot of doctors roll their eyes, scoff at it, and it's ridiculous, and it's a get-rich-quick scheme used by drug dealers and money laundering and all this stuff. But if you step back and look at it, what it actually is, what it's trying to solve, it's fascinating. And I think it's got a real shot. And just watching it grow is evidence of that.
It is fascinating. And I am guilty of, well, I'm not guilty. I'm proud of what I bought with it. I bought a camper trailer so I can take my son camping.
Yeah, beautiful.
That's what I use my Bitcoin for, because I was like, look, I'm not an expert at this stuff, but I only got my kid. Once he's like 12, 13 years old, he's not going to want to spend as much time with me. But while he still idolizes us, let's just make some cool memories, thank you, Bitcoin. And like
100%.
And
good for you. Good for
yeah,
you. Time and love are more valuable than
it's finite.
Sure.
It's finite. And that's the way a lot of the concepts in your book really kind of resonated with me. And it's hard to find physicians that are actually talking about these concepts and kind of thinking in ways that challenge the current system, which we just discussed, only causes more suffering, both on the utilizer of the service and to us as physicians. That moral injury, you can't overemphasize that, and it comes in multiple different forms. Man, I was trying to. I almost threw in the towel. So like right about the time I was getting out of the Navy, I was like, man, I don't know how they can do this shit anymore. And that was in the Navy. It was like a much easier life because I was just salary.
I feel you.
And pathology was kind of a way. That was my way of quitting clinical medicine. I was just like, all right, let me just pivot. And I think that allowed me the psychological bandwidth to write more. So like the journaling that you talk about in the book, that helped me a lot. I mean, I started in 2020 of like just developing writing practice, and it helped a lot kind of clarify a vision of which direction I wanted to go. But anyways, let me keep going along with.
No, I thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think that is a very common sort of, we've all faced that, and much less so when I was, in my early 30s and just fresh out of residency. It was just much better and much easier. And
well, so Noah, so you know what I'm talking about when they make you sign non-disclosure agreements, right? And you see things. I thought that leaving clinical medicine would make that go away, but it doesn't, because I actually see more now on the back end as a surgical pathologist of just very wrong things going on in the medical record, woefully inadequate care, inadequate documentation,
all over the place.
Over-reliance on mid-levels. What started out as a very
Mhm.
useful extender has now become the industry is trying to use it as a replacement. And the
Mhm.
things that I see going on are just malpractice. And we
Yeah.
all know what's going on, but a lot of the hospitalists, they're not going to complain because they work for the house, and the house always
Yeah.
wins. And the things that I see going on, it's like, well, um, this is eventually going to make it to the Wall Street Journal. Some of these overnight issues that happen in terms of understaffing, and it's because the incentives are wrong. The groups that are providing, and it's not just where I work, it's all over the country. When you have these large private equity backed groups, their incentive is to commodify the care and to squeeze every last penny, even if that means leaving the night shift completely understaffed. Like,
Right.
I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Superman. One person covering 250 patients is malpractice. Like the sick hospital ward patients with multiple medical problems, uh, and that's for a board certified residency trained physicians. But these
Yeah.
organizations, they have mid levels taking on a level of caseload that you, even as a intern, would be like, what? That's not even humanly possible. But they're doing it now, man, and they're getting away with it.
Yeah. 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 It's bad. It's really scary. I agree 100%. It's all incentives. It's all money, money, money.
Yeah. So okay, so what are the things that you see? So actually, what I really want to ask you, do you think that there's enough cadre of people like you and I, working doctors and people like Dutch Rojas? Do you think that there's enough kindling that maybe 10 years from now, like this system could look totally different?
Well, first off, yes, I think most doctors, if you sat down in a room, would sacrifice quite a bit to help change the system. I think that doctors are very good people. I think that, we're generally a very ethical profession, one of the most noble professions. At one point we were the most noble profession, but now there's been a lot of trust issues, and there's now this money grift. We've been, debased morally by all these other stakeholders who have come in and kind of taken over. So I do think that there is more than enough kindling, and I think it's very volatile. I do think that the whole system, however, is and this is a huge part of the system. It's a third of our GDP. But the whole system is right now fracturing. And I think that this comes at a time of, AI and incredible technological advancement. And so there are some fascinating questions about, like, in 10 years, are half the doctors even going to be needed because AI will be sufficiently robust to deliver healthcare? I mean, it's crazy. The things that are happening now are crazy. And so there's a lot of questions, but I think that, uh, if you take AI out of the equation, which is hard to do, and if you take other advancements out of the equation, I would agree, or I would say that there is enough kindling, there is enough of, a morally incentivized cohort of physicians and professionals that I think that the solution is there. But the problem is, and I say this in my book, is trying to solve the medical issues that we have, like the healthcare system issues that we have, is like you've got a broken car and you're sitting in the car and you're pushing on the dashboard from inside the car, trying to move the car forward. Like, that's what we're trying to do. And so I don't know if, even though we have a lot of morally incentivized people, you're up against an absolute skyscraper of money and politics and incentives that are almost impossible to dismantle. And this is why I think Bitcoiners and people who are trying to think about the next paradigm, whatever that is, even if it has nothing to do with Bitcoin, but try to imagine a better vision of the world. And I'm not saying it's socialism or communism or capitalism or some kind of political ideology that has
Energism.
to change. Yeah, right. I bring up energism, but and that falls within like Bitcoin or decentralized. The centralized structures are prone to corruption, and we've seen that throughout human history. And so whether that's the AMA or it's our very government, things start off well-intentioned and then they centralize power, they centralize money. People are fundamentally greedy because I think of incentives and scarcity, because the way we've been for, 40,000 years, where we've had to worry about winter and the neighboring tribe coming and raping and killing us and, taking over. So I think we're always expecting the worst. So we want to hoard resources and we think everything's so scarce, but we're truly in an abundant age. And so, I think that we need to catch up as human beings, as physicians, as politicians, and catch up with the fact that there really is enough to make the world a much easier, happier place. And so, yeah, I kind of went off a little bit on a tangent, but I do think
No,
that
that's so. How does the working doctor become Nietzsche's Ubermensch in the context
yeah.
of, working and seeing patients?
Well, right now, I think there's like, if you were to do it right now within the current system, I think what it takes is like a superhuman ability to live well below your means, maybe in like a very ascetic sort of way, and focus on your craft and be somewhat of a Mother Teresa, or maybe that's a bad analogy, but somewhat of you're the best version of yourself outside of money and that sort of thing, and be a selfless kind of worker for humanity. And I think that's almost impossible. So I really think that for the modern physician to become an Ubermensch, or just like the best version of themselves, they're kind of like archetypal, perfect self. They should be able to have time to focus on enlightenment activities and self-actualization and psychological and spiritual growth. And those things really come when you're not stressed about money or, the future. I think one of the problems is now, we all know when I was a kid, $1 million was like, if you were a millionaire, was insane.
Yep.
That was enough money to retire on, $1 million.
Yep.
And if you ask somebody what's your number to retire, everybody, you think about that as an exercise. What's your number? Okay, well, when I was in residency, it was $2 million or whatever. Now I hear a lot of docs say, well, it's 5 million to 10 million. And then in 10 years, it's going to be 20 million. And the thing is, every 5 to 7 years, your money is worth half of what it was 5 to 7 years ago. And so you're kept in this productivity trap, and you're not allowed to become the Ubermensch and become fully self-actualized and free yourself. See, the thing is, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I talk about, you have to have food and water and shelter over your head to worry about being loved and love and happiness. And so then once you get love and happiness, self-actualization is the pinnacle of that pyramid of self-discovery and growth. And I think that in today's world and society, and because of the grift, which is modern medicine, modern society, I mean, I think it's across all professions and all of society. The fact of the matter is we're constantly stressed. We measure our net worth in dollars, which is insane because the dollar is always losing value. So we're always having to work more and more, and we're in this like crazy hamster wheel. And we can't focus on becoming our best selves because we're always so busy doing an extra shift or two and paying off student loans, which today are just like insane. I mean, it's like unreal. It's unconscionable. So
It's basically a stop mechanism. So in the previous generation, I think it still made sense to take out student loans at 1.8% for a profession that is going to pay in essentially the 95th to 99th percentile
Right.
of American incomes. But now it's like you're making a very bad financial decision if you choose to go 300 to $500,000 in debt and then choose this line of work, let alone anything at all.
Yeah.
And I guess I encourage people to look for MD, PhD scholarships, military scholarships, any form of public service scholarship to offset the tuition, or just don't go. I mean, unfortunately, that's just the reality.
Yeah. You don't get to start till you're 30 either. So all your
Yeah.
buddies have been working through their 20s and they've already amassed a pretty good retirement. Yeah, it's
I mean, it's just
yeah,
like until the system will have to address that or import doctors from overseas or whatever. But I don't think I feel like physicians, at least in the beginning, you tend to be very self-sacrificing. It's just like, this is my calling. I don't care. Like,
very idealistic.
yeah, I'm very idealistic. Do it, but you should care. This is dangerous because if you're, $500,000 in debt and the interest rate now is between 7-8%, you are sabotaging your psychological health long term. Just to
Yeah.
exist in the world, let alone
Well,
help.
especially working. Yeah. Well, especially working a job where you want to help people, like you just said, but it gets harder and harder and harder. And your income goes down and down and down over the years. And after 10 years of working, more than you should be for an appropriate balance for a human being, you're going to lose it. You're going to get stressed. You're going to, and physicians kill themselves. And there's a lot of mental health problems. So look, this is why I think all physicians should be financially free and independent. Like you should go to medical school and you should have zero taxes and you should, and you should just be given $1 million a year. And so you don't have to worry about money because physicians having to worry about money, that impacts patient care and that's not what you want. You want physicians to be happy. And so since society hasn't created that, I mean, that's what we used to have,
All
where
right.
physicians had like tons of money, excess money. Um, that's what you want. I mean, you want your physician to be well rested, happy, enjoying their life,
Yeah.
and eager to help you.
Yeah.
Like this is just common sense that everybody would be like, yeah, I want my physician to be like, not worry about money, but be like studying medicine in their own time because they love medicine, they love their craft, and they just want to help me and my family. They,
Absolutely.
give them $1 million. So, because of that, I think that, Bitcoin offers like a life raft and a way out because it has been the number one cager, compound annual growth return financial asset class in the last 16 years with the highest Sharpe ratio. Sharpe ratio, of course, is the risk adjusted return. So you need less of it. If you put 1 or 2%, it doesn't matter what you believe or if you understand Bitcoin or not. Just as a financial instrument, BlackRock is recommending whatever 2% right now. Smartest guys in the world are recommending that you have an allocation to Bitcoin. Every single physician, whether they believe it or not, should have 2%, at least of their portfolio in Bitcoin. Because if it goes to zero, I'm not saying it's going to go to $10 million a coin. I think there's a good chance that it will. A very good chance. I think that's what it's programmed to do. I think it's likely that Bitcoin will be $10 million a coin in 20 years. But what I'm saying is, even if you don't believe that or know it, and even if Bitcoin goes to zero, so what? You lose 2% of your net worth. But let's say it goes up 100x. Well, that 2% that you put, all of a sudden it doubles the size of your net worth. So, this is a no-brainer as a financial instrument for people, even if they don't understand the philosophy, the psychology, the fact that it's decentralized, which is very powerful. And, the last kind of argument for Bitcoin, outside of making people wealthy again through a deflationary currency that always goes up in value, is the fact that, it's not controllable. It's just purely run on mathematics and code. There's nobody who owns it. It's non-centralized. It's like mathematics. It's like the most egalitarian money system you could devise. So,
Well,
so
so
you know, yeah,
let me dig more into that topic. So
yeah.
I had emailed you like the question, and then I reread the section in your book where you kind of talk about this. So the critics of Bitcoin would say that, oh, it's not really decentralized because there's like, a minority of wallets that can control the largest share of Bitcoin that's out there in the world.
Mhm.
And use the analogy of an island, and like all the wealthy people buy up most of the island, but then on a long enough time horizon, the investment and the value creation basically with a deflationary asset, it distributes better than fiat into the population. I didn't quite understand that. Could you?
Yeah, sure. Well, a couple things. And first, just to explain that and put a pin in it, um, it's just like imagine the founders of Facebook, right? Mark Zuckerberg and those. In the very beginning, well, maybe Facebook is bad because they have a crazy thing with the Winklevoss, but let's say Amazon. In the beginning, Jeff Bezos owned 100% of Amazon.
Okay.
And then over time, as there's this new company, more, equity gets distributed, there's investors. And over time then it becomes a public stock and more people own it. And so it naturally gets distributed. That's first thing. That's kind of like the island thing. So it certainly is a problem that Elon Musk could buy, $400 billion worth of Bitcoin if he wanted to and have 1% of all the Bitcoin, but a lot of people think that these huge wallets, those are all pooled wallets. Those are wallets from the ETFs. Those are wallets from Coinbase that represent millions and millions of people.
Oh,
So it's very poorly understood. It actually is extremely well. That's actually a great question for ChatGPT. Just plug it in and say how decentralized is Bitcoin vis-a-vis the fact that there's large wallets, and it'll tell you, well, this is all these are wallets like Coinbase, which represent actually 20 million people.
okay.
So it's a centralized, and for the record, I would not keep anything on Coinbase.
Yeah, ain't that the truth?
Keys,
Bro,
the coins.
I cleared out my Coinbase account like a year ago when I bought my camper. And since then, I've gotten like 3 critical notices from Coinbase that my wallet was accessed from Singapore, from Germany. And then I'm on the phone. I was like, can you guys just like close that account? Because I'm just going to start over on a different platform at this point. So then how would you, I interrupted you, but could you just explain the safety risks of having your funds in Coinbase or a similar wallet instead of cold storage?
Sure. Well, I've been buying Bitcoin since 2015. I got very lucky, on a night shift, someone told me about it, and I've always been new to try stuff. I've always believed in gold and silver and have a ton of physical gold and silver, real estate and all that stuff. But so I bought a bunch of Bitcoin. I've collected Bitcoin. I bought it over the last 10 years. I buy every single day. And in 2020, I decided to take a bunch of my Bitcoin and I put it on Voyager because it was offering yield. And so I was getting 9%, a year, and I had a couple $1,000,000 of Bitcoin in there, actually more than that. And so I every month I would make more from my Bitcoin than I would make in medicine.
Wow.
And so, but then guess what happened? It's a centralized platform and they went bankrupt. They got caught up in some bad loans and they went bankrupt.
Oh.
And I lost like 40 Bitcoin or something like that. Which is a ton of Bitcoin. And thank God I have a ton more in cold storage, and I'm fine. I've got a lot of Bitcoin, but that was a huge lesson because 40 Bitcoin right now, I mean, that's like $6 million or whatever it is.
Wow.
So like I FO'd, and but I knew what Bitcoin was still, and I took my lickings, and luckily it didn't. I'm a very optimistic person, But any centralized exchange, they control your Bitcoin. So they're not your actual Bitcoin. They give you an IOU for Bitcoin. So the only way to own Bitcoin is in cold storage, in a virtual safe that cannot be touched by anyone. And here's the crazy thing. Let's say all hell broke loose tomorrow, like in a bad way, like Nazi Germany, Weimar Republic kind of, or in Nazi Germany way. And I had to get out of the US. Okay. This has happened to people. Can I bring my gold and silver out of a safe? What am I going to do? Put a gold bar on my ass? No, I can't do that. Like, I cannot do that. Okay. So I can't bring my gold and silver. Maybe I could bring a couple silver coins. I can't bring, let's say I want to bring, $5 million of my wealth with me. I can't bring stocks. I can't bring real estate, obviously. I can't bring cash. All that stuff will be discovered. I can't bring anything except for Bitcoin, which I can bring with either on a jump drive or with 12 words memorized in my head. That's it. 12 words memorized in my head. I could go anywhere in this world and have, I'm obviously not going to say how much, but a lot of money at my disposal to do whatever I want with. And I can reconstitute it anywhere I want. I can barter with people. I can off ramp it and turn it into whatever local currency it is. Obviously, I would go somewhere that is very crypto friendly, very, and I shouldn't say crypto. I should say digital. I should say Bitcoin, because all the other 20,000 coins, those are all going to zero, and those are all scams. Ethereum, XRP, all of those. I would stay away from everything, over the long term, unless you're like a total gambler and, but
I learned my lesson. I learned my lessons. I was down. I got rid of that. I used this last year to kind of like refocus on the next 20-year strategy of, how I'm gonna keep on. I was just like, okay, so let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Using River or Cash App or whatever, one could purchase Bitcoin weekly or daily. And how frequently would you suggest offloading that into cold storage?
Yeah. So, okay. Well, so first, I don't have a relationship or anything to disclose with Strike or River. I don't recommend Cash App. I don't recommend Coinbase.
Okay.
I would use River. Those guys are fantastic. They have proof of reserves, meaning they have the exact amount of Bitcoin that, and I wouldn't keep it on their platform. But what you do is you set up a recurring DCA. It's very simple. You download the River app or the Strike app. You connect it to your bank account. It takes 5 seconds, just the same way you connect TD Ameritrade or Schwab or whatever. And if you set up a recurring buy, there's no fees. There's zero fees if you just DCA Bitcoin. So I do $100 a day still every day.
Okay.
And I've been doing that forever. And, and then I have it set up so that at every, 0.05 Bitcoin, it automatically transfers to my wallet, to my cold storage. And so it's very easy to do. I mean, it's as easy as it's easier than opening a stock account or anything like that. And there's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of, YouTube videos or ChatGPT or, just ask people questions. It's super easy to do. It's not like you have to
say that terminology again. Like, what does DCA mean?
Oh, dollar cost average. That's all.
Oh, I see.
So that, yeah. So that just means you're buying $5 every day. And so if the price is, $116,000 now, and then it's, $300,000 and $500,000, and it drops to $180,000, you're going to be getting like a daily, your price average of where you're buying is going to, it's going to, kind of flatten out the volatility so that you don't buy at the top of a cycle.
I see.
Nobody has lost money in Bitcoin if they've held for 4 years.
Okay.
Period.
And okay, so help me understand this just conceptually. So your 12-word seed phrase,
Yeah.
you can take your money from River and put it on a mobile, either a jump drive or one of those designated cold wallets, like made out of metal or something? How does that exactly work?
Right, right. So there's a couple different kinds of storage. You can store it on a phone in an app. That's called hot storage or a hot wallet because it's connected to the internet and it's a little less safe, but you're still in control of it. And it's still better than Coinbase or something like that. And it's not for keeping large amounts. It's just for keeping, a small amount. Or you can use a cold wallet, which, in a cold storage wallet, there's a lot of varieties out there. And what these are is they look like little calculators or little jump drives with a little readout. And they go into the USB port of your computer. And you put your Bitcoin onto this jump drive, and then it's not connected to the internet anymore. And then you put that in a safe deposit box or something. You have a backup because each one of these cold storages at the jump drive, let's say the jump drive's in a fire in your house, or you lose it, right? Or you throw it away, or your dog eats it. You'd think you'd be fucked. But you're not, because each one of these things has a private key, which is like a very long sequence of letters and numbers. But that's impossible to memorize. And so it also has another key that's called a seed phrase. So there's two keys to your hot wallet or your cold wallet. There's a seed phrase, which is the 12 or 24 words. I like to keep mine 12. And then there's the private key. And the private key you can cut and paste and that sort of thing. And then there's a public address, so people know how to send you that you can share. And so there's those three things. And it sounds awfully confusing, but it's just like the password to your bank account. It's the password to your safe. It's like the actual key. It's a digital key to a digital safe.
Okay.
And so there's two types of keys. So imagine a safe that has like a little wheel that turns between numbers, to open the safe. But then there's also like a hidden sliding compartment where you can actually put a key in and you can turn the key in. So there's two ways to open the safe. The sliding of the numbers on the wheel, that's like the 12 words. Okay. So instead of a wheel with like numbers that you twist and it goes between, imagine you just had to type in 12 words. And then the actual key is just this like 56, or whatever numbers and letters that's impossible to memorize. So there's two ways to get into the safe. You got to keep those secret and safe. And that's when people like put them onto a metal disc and they write the 12 words and then they put that in a safe or into something that can't melt in a fire.
Oh,
and then you
I
can put
see.
that in a safe deposit box. That's just a way of keeping track of, so that you don't forget it. I have my seed phrase memorized, and every morning I say it out loud. I say it to myself so that, and then I have, family members who know it. And then I have, other backups. And then every now and then I change wallets so that if somebody were to come and put a gun to my head, or something, or, family members have, then they wouldn't be, I have ways of updating it and keeping it secure. So that sounds like an awful lot to do and think about. So they have cold keys and cold storage that are like much easier nowadays, where you barely have to know any of this. You don't have to memorize any words. But to suffice it to say, like even if you just got an app on your phone, like a wallet, like Moon Wallet, or there's all kinds of wallets. That would be good enough, and it'll walk you through everything. And it all sounds complicated, but it's like it takes maybe 20 minutes to get set up, and you can have somebody walk you through it, or ChatGPT, or you just watch a video on YouTube, and it gets easier and easier every year as people do this. But again, I think that one of the mechanisms I propose for physicians to become more wealthy so they don't have to worry about money, so they can deliver better healthcare and become their own Ubermensch, is to buy Bitcoin and opt out of the current system, which is insane and crumbling in front of our eyes.
Fuck.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's my homework. I'm gonna restart this game. Yeah, I played around with the Phantom wallet a few years ago and Solana and this and that.
Oh, there's a million distractions. Bitcoin is the actual invention. It's the actual birth of a new asset class. Everything else is just trying to create some vaporware, trying to create something to make money on the heels of Bitcoin. I mean, it's just so much insanity and grift, and it's all peak fiat, as we like to say.
Well, the 12 words is it links into like the meditative, the energism, right? Because it's like transcendental meditation. You have these 12 mantras that you're saying to yourself every morning.
That's interesting. Yeah, I like that. I
So
never even really thought about it like that.
your commitment to a deflationary asset that ultimately long term would alleviate your stress and make you more energetic, basically, because you're not worried about money as much.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, now I get to practice medicine. I get to practice medical legal consulting, which I love. It's fascinating.
Yeah, let's
I
talk
get
about
to
that
do
a little bit.
these- Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But I get to do these out of enjoyment now, not to make money.
I see. I see.
You know, because my Bitcoin, the problem I have is I don't want to sell my Bitcoin because it's a lot of capital gains, and I believe in Bitcoin. And if you had as much conviction as I do that Bitcoin's going to multiple millions of dollars per coin in the next 10 years, you know, it's hard to sell something like that because it becomes the most valuable thing you own.
Right.
Why would you sell? You know, like, and the only reason is to buy a camper to spend time with your kiddo. And
Well, that was my okay. So I didn't start trading until I think 2019 or 2020. So I went through like those two cycles, still new, just kind of playing around with like small sums of money.
yeah,
In comparison to obviously the big dogs. I kind of I could be wrong about this, but I I got the sense that it's advantageous to anyone with a larger wallet to benefit from the volatility because the people that I was talking to on Twitter, they were all in these secret Discord groups where they, talk about their little altcoins and everything, and they kind of like get together and drive up the price and then sell it all at once. And so I'm just thinking to myself, like, well, I guess I could just buy a new car or I buy a little bit of land every 3 years when sell it before it crashes and then get some land and then do that again. But then that's kind of against the entire philosophy of Bitcoin,
well,
if you really believe in it.
well, I mean, it takes a lot of work and a lot of study to really understand Bitcoin. At least 100 hours. I mean, it's really fascinating. It doesn't take that much time to understand why like the argument for why you should consider a 2%, portion of your portfolio. But if you really want to understand it and understand why it's so, incredibly powerful, that takes a lot of study. But that being said, it's hard to time the market, and there is a business cycle, and there are peaks and troughs to any asset class, and Bitcoin has historically been very volatile. So, I think that you have to have a real long-term vision if you're investing in really anything and you're trying to kind of keep your wealth and grow your wealth. And trading, most traders lose. No matter how smart you are, 80% of the market is algorithmically traded by computers, and they're designed to take your money. And it's like Vegas. You will lose if you trade in the market, unless you're like the top 5% or 1%, or somehow, can do everything opposite of what you would normally do. That's the only way to win. Seriously, it's crazy. So buying Bitcoin and holding it for a long term is a legacy sort of thing. And I mean, God, there's over 60 million millionaires I'm not sure if it's the world or the US. I don't remember the stat, but there's only 21 million Bitcoin, a bunch of which have been lost. Do the math. Every millionaire can only have like 0.3 Bitcoin. So like if you get to 1 Bitcoin, that's called being a whole coiner. Like in 10 years, when your Bitcoin is, a couple $1,000,000, or in 20 years when it's $10 million of Bitcoin, and what will that be able to buy you, right? Like maybe I mean, a lot, but
Well, you could, I mean,
but
if your retirement age, I mean, that could be the house on a homestead that you want to just live and have family over and, tell stories by the fire.
yeah, well, I guess what I'm saying is that $10 million in 20 years is going to be worth about 2.5 million in today's dollars.
Okay.
So it sounds like a lot, but it's like not actually that crazy.
Oh, I see. Yes. Yeah.
Because you got to adjust for inflation. That's the crazy thing, is the whole current system is predicated on theft of your value and theft of the value of your money.
So crazy.
I don't know why we would make a system like that. Like it's actually insane. Like you're okay. Let's make a system
Well,
where you're worth less and less over time.
it makes sense if you were the guys on Jekyll Island in 1919.
Yeah. Right. And that's a whole, rabbit hole of Bitcoin you can go down. But and anyway, I know you wanted to ask about
What? Yeah.
other things, but
Well, I do want to, I want to keep this kind of tactical and productive, even though I go on these philosophical tangents.
but it's amazing. I love it.
But so you started doing medico-legal expert witness work. How did you get into it, and how do you make money through it? And I mean, I know you don't care about the money now because you have reserves, but how does like a young early?
I care.
Good.
I care about the money. I mean, like I'm not like some elevated, enlightened, sort of ultra rich dude who doesn't care about money. I think because of the current system and our psychology, like I don't want to borrow against my Bitcoin. I don't want to sell my Bitcoin. So I still pay the bills with money from medicine. I
Okay.
still enjoy my craft. I still enjoy being a doctor, and making money, makes me feel valued. So I got into it before I got into Bitcoin. I got into it over a decade ago, and someone had reached out to me, and they said, hey, I did this TV show, American Ninja Warrior. I did
Oh, that's
7
right. Yeah, I
seasons.
saw you. This would think.
I did that. So some lawyer reached out to me and said, I saw you on Ninja Warrior, and it looks like you're a year back, and you seem really good in front of people. I bet you'd be great in front of a jury. We're defending an doc who had this, horrible outcome happen, but doesn't seem like it was their fault. It was just a bad outcome. And so I said, let me take a look at the case. And, I had considered law. My mother's an attorney. My partner's an attorney. She's, does civil rights here in Denver, employment law. And so, I've always loved writing, just wrote this book, and I've written another book. And so, and I'm writing another book right now. And so I always loved kind of the philosophy of medicine and the ethics of it and standard of care. I've sat on peer review committees. And so it was very natural. And we went in and did the case, and I was deposed. I wrote an opinion. They loved the opinion. They said, they said, oh, you got a knack for this. And I did the deposition, which was super fun. And it was like intellectual sparring with this other attorney who was trying to, trick me up and make me look like a fool and all this stuff. But I held my ground. And after the deposition, the attorney who hired me high-fived me, and she was like, that was incredible. And then, within a couple hours, they dropped the lawsuit. And so I made a huge difference, and I protected this doc, and I felt like a hero.
Wow.
And, I didn't charge very much money for it at all. Of course, I was just starting out. But so then over time, I've built a thriving practice, and about half the work I do is med mal. I do cases for both sides now because that makes you more credible. I turn down a lot of cases. I won't take a case if I can't support it. I do pro bono work for people who need it, where I don't charge anything. But I work for both sides. I do a lot of very interesting personal injury cases where I'm asked to come in and talk about how much the person suffered, or what their injuries mean, or what it would be like, and use demonstratives. And so it's really fun to be in court, and be in a suit and be representing physicians and representing standards of care and what it means to practice medicine prospectively. And the crazy thing is, at this point now, of course, in medicine, your hourly rate doesn't really go up that much over time.
Right.
If anything, it goes down, which is crazy. But in this, I can raise my rates 10% a year. So now I'm making 4 or 5 times per hour what I make as an ER doc. I make 5 times an hour being in a courtroom or testifying or writing an opinion as I do literally saving a baby's life. That's how society values the law and medical legal experts versus, so I'm writing a book about this now, and there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot to become a good expert. You have to be likable, relatable with the jury. You got to be able to write well. You have to be quick on your feet. You have to really understand prospective standard of care. And then, you have to have a ton of integrity. I mean, you cannot go out there and, I turn down cases all the time. And so when I turn down a case, obviously I don't get paid. I don't bill hours. But I turn down cases when I can't support them.
I see.
And that happens more frequently than you would think. And attorneys appreciate that, plaintiff attorneys, and say, hey, I got a case. This lady went into the ER. She was discharged. She died the next morning. The family wants to sue. Is there a good case here? Was there a deviation from standard of care? I look at the care, and 99 times out of 100, the doctors did everything right, and it's just a bad outcome. It's just horrible. And we don't have a crystal ball, but everything they did was reasonable. There were nothing they missed, no telltale signs. The person just died. It was their time. And I say, I can't support this. You don't have a case. But the problem is they'll be able to find an expert who will support it.
Wow.
And so, and then they'll end up losing the case and be, billing a ton of hours to the family and a lot of stress for the doctor. And then the doctor might have to settle even if they're in the right. So I feel like I'm doing a lot of good keeping bad cases out of the court system, and getting very well compensated for that. And I have a lot of experience doing it now. It's been over a decade. So,
Wow. So what's it like when you're you're toe to toe with the opposing attorney? And is it true that they just say a bunch of this stuff to try to discredit you, and they put you in this line of questioning to get you into this yes or no frame to
oh yeah.
discredit you? And then can you give me an example of that and how you respond?
Oh, sure. They love to do hypotheticals. So I just want to think of an example. I do so many depositions and trials now. I almost want to take an old case and just kind of switch around the facts. But suffice it to say, in the questioning, they will go down a line of reasoning that there's a couple things they like to do, and they've read books on this and they're very well practiced. But they'll try and trap you into that aren't you duty bound to make sure that you protect your patient against the worst possible outcome. And that seems like an obvious, well, yes, but that's not an obvious yes. And so, you have to be able to say no to questions that they expect you to say yes to, and then defend your position, because they have a whole line of reasoning behind the assumption that you're going to say yes to a very basic, obvious sounding question, like very innocent sounding question.
I see.
And so they'll trap you. They'll say, let's say let's say you see someone in the ER and they're complaining of some chest pain, and it hurts when they take a deep breath. It hurts when you push on their chest. You get a troponin, it's negative. EKG is negative. 2 hours later, the second troponin is negative. They say they were bench pressing the day before. They don't have a family history. Okay, all this. And then you do everything right. You document everything. They go home. They die that night of a massive heart attack before ever getting a stress test or anything else. Well, that's going to end up in a lawsuit. But guess what? The doctor did everything right, and that shouldn't be a lawsuit. That's like, it sucks, and it's like, there's no way to know there's outside of truly being clairvoyant. 100 out of 100 doctors would have approached the case the same way with standards of care. So what the attorney might ask in the deposition is, first they'll try and get you kind of dialed up and emotional so that you're, and they're going to use all this against you. So, they'll try and attack you, but it's fun. I love it. It's very adversarial. It's like intellectual sparring, like I said. But what they might ask you is they'll say, well, doctor, isn't it your duty to find a potential heart attack? Like, and then like you'd think the answer would be, well, yes. And then you say, well, yes, but we tried to do that and there was no heart. You can't say yes, but, because they'll cut you off and they'll stop you at yes.
Oh,
And then they'll go down their line of reasoning.
okay.
And so you have to say no. What we do is we practice standard of care. So we do what all other physicians would do prospectively with a similar training in a similar environment, and so no, we do not have a duty to prevent a heart attack or to find a heart attack that no other doctor, or that we wouldn't be able to find. But if you don't answer that right, a lot of early experts, get screwed. But then what they'll do is they'll go into a hypothetical and they'll say, okay, well, with this patient who went home with the heart attack, let's just hypothetically, let's say you had admitted them and they were in the hospital, and let's say they had coded in the hospital. Would there be a chance that you'd be able to save them? And then, of course, you could say, well, there's, there's always a chance, and then you get into trouble. So you can't entertain hypotheticals, but you kind of have to answer the question.
I'm really interested. So then how do you deflect that one?
So again, I'm writing a book of this. I'm writing
you're writing
right now called, well, I'll tell you, but I'm writing a book called The Ethical Expert Witness.
He's going to switch it over. He's like, well, I can't tell you. You got to buy the.
No. I mean, the book's not going to be out for a while. I'm happy to share all of this.
Sure.
So much nuance, so much experience I've gathered over a decade of doing this.
Okay.
It's a fascinating place where medicine meets law, and people need justice. And it's an imperfect system, but it's really rewarding to be part of it. But in any event, so what I do in those scenarios, and it depends on like the repartee and the just the back and forth with the opposing counsel attorney, and whether they're being very adversarial and emotional and they're trying to be heated, or if they're just doing this from a purely kind of intellectual and nice kind of like they want to know, because they have different approaches. It's just like your patients, like you're going to be put on a different kind of social mask with different patients who have different expectations, and you're not going to interject your own beliefs about politics or religion.
Right.
So it's like that with these attorneys. So the approaches might be slightly different, but what you have to say is you have to stand firm and say, look, again, if you want to speak hypotheticals, you could get into any hypothetical situation where you could get the answer you want for anything. So it doesn't really make sense to go down this route of talking about hypotheticals because this case wasn't hypothetical. This really happened, and what I've been brought on to do is to share an impartial opinion about what is prospectively reasonable when delivering healthcare and medicine. And in this case, everything was prospectively reasonable. Okay, yes, doctor, we understand that. But if they had been admitted and they had coded in the hospital or had a heart attack in the hospital, could they have been saved? And, you have to, and they're going to keep trying to do that. And you can't say, well, I refuse to answer that question. You have to be more like a politician, and you have to keep coming at it from sideways, because if you refuse to answer it, you say, well, I'm not going to answer that. That's a hypothetical. Then they're going to use that against you. So it's like they're trying to trap you in either admitting a hypothetical, and then they're going to use that in court, and they'll say, the opposition's very own expert agreed that if this patient had been admitted, that there would be a chance to save them. And so they're very good, they're very sneaky, and they're very good at doing this stuff, and it's very easy to get caught up. So you can't, or they'll say, the doctor, the opposing expert refused to answer my questions in deposition. I want to get him removed as an expert because he won't. He's being, argumentative, and he will not answer questions about, valid, because they're allowed to ask about hypotheticals. So that's one very small, example. But
do you ever just like, I don't know, you just like make them laugh or like I don't know, turn?
Oh yeah. Well, sometimes they get real heated, and I'll say things like, I can tell if you're getting a little emotional. Would you like to take a break?
Labeling.
I don't want, it's really.
I love it, dude. I'm all about that. That's the most gangster shit ever. Like, who's that FBI person? Yeah. You label it, and it like de-escalates the.
Yeah. Oh, there's so it's really, really a blast if you're, and being unflappable. Not so, they'll bring up my social media, and they'll be like, oh, aren't you like a big crypto guy? As if like that's because there's a stigma against it, and it's crypto and scammers and all this stuff, and they want to put me in that boat. And I'll start talking to them about Bitcoin, and I'll like orange pill them, and I'll be like, well, not really crypto. There's a lot of scams and a lot of real concerns. And look, I don't know the future. I don't know what's going to happen with these things. I invest in real estate and gold and silver and Bitcoin, and happy to talk with you about that more. But yeah, I provide some education. So you have to be very kind of forthwith. They asked me one time they were like, hey, you posted on your social media that you got like a hair replacement, like surgery. They're like, isn't that a bit weird to post on social media? And I was like, well, there's the thing is, do you think it's weird? I was like, there's some stigma against it. Like, I think it's something that maybe shouldn't be stigmatized against. I mean, I have a very public career. It was something that my partner wanted me to do. Do you want to really go into my personal life? Well, you post it on social media, Well, yeah, I think that there doesn't need to be a stigma about it. And I did it, and I just wanted to share my experience. And, so you end up deflating a lot of their potential arguments just by being authentic, and they want to attack your credibility. And if the most they can come up with is, do you believe in Bitcoin? Then they got real problems.
What if the best they could come up with is like, I'm asking for on behalf of myself, what if I just got done writing a scathing, Substack post about the hospital industry and their lobbying efforts and how they push,
they'll bring it up.
Yeah, so they'll bring it up.
And they'll say, doctor, don't you think you're biased against the healthcare system, and that might translate into some kind of bias in your, impartiality vis-a-vis, being an expert witness. And, but you can defend that, and you can say, well, no, I really care about my patients. And here's the problem. There are some real problems in medicine. I think everybody knows that. And, they'll stop right away once you start explaining. And as long as you're not getting really defensive and like, oh, you got me, like,
oh, okay.
So like they as long as you can turn it around and show,
you just own
that it's a positive.
Yeah,
you just own it.
You own it, and you've put it into a positive light. Like it's something. Yeah. You got it. Yes, exactly. I really do believe in what I wrote about. You don't try to. Okay.
Yeah, right, right. And and you turn it into like, well, I care about people, and this is one of the way that manifests because people are suffering here, and and then I'll ask them, I'll be like, do you have a problem with me defending my patients, or and then they'll be like, well, I'm the one asking the questions here, and then you could be like, well, I was answering your question with a question, and you can really get them flamed up. It's so much fun, but they will go after, oh, have you, are you board certified? Okay, have you ever been sued? Tell me about your lawsuits. Have you been named in a lawsuit? And we all got that. Somehow I haven't been sued yet, but like 95% of us, and probably some of it is because of the medical expert and peer review stuff. I mean, I know how to chart. I know how to be good with patients, but the ER is a total minefield. So I'm sure it's only a matter of time before I'm on the other end of the hot seat. But
That actually sounds like a fucking blast. But I feel like it's got to be hard to not break frame. You know what I mean? Because it's like, okay, if you and I are just like bullshitting on I don't know, let's say we meet up and we're just having beers or something. Like it's fun to break frame sometimes and just say something ridiculous. At me, I would
right,
feel the whole bit. I'd be like, okay, man, yeah, you seem like the type of guy that pees on yourself in the mirror,
right, right, something wildly inappropriate for. Well, and you do have to remember that it's all being like recorded, both video recorded and written. So you gotta be. So there's like a fine line.
polished professional type thing.
Yeah, you have to stay very credible and very professional.
Yeah.
And so, you're battling them like superficially, intellectually, like with words, but then also emotionally. Um, and so, it's kind of, I mean, for me, there's a career of like battling with, and it's unfortunate it's this way, but overworked consultants or surgeons or the hospitalist. There's always that guy or gal who is a total wall. And, you got somebody who's dying in the ER and you need the surgeon because there's an eroded duodenal ulcer or something. And they're like literally puking up blood, like cups of blood every minute. And and you put a tube down and whatever, but like you call the surgeon and you're like, and they're like, I literally have had surgeons be, well, don't get your panties in a bunch. Let's wait for the H and see, which is the dumbest thing ever. And let's see where
These
we're
puking
at.
cups of blood.
Yeah, and so I called the surgeon back like 5 minutes later. I'm like, hey, just want to let you know, I talked to the family and let them know that the patient is going to die, and that you weren't able to make it into surgery. I just wanted to give you a heads up, and that's all. And dead silence on the other side of the phone, and it's like, okay, I'll call the OR. I'll be right in. And literally, and obviously, you saved the guy's life, and they came down and apologized to me, but like that happens to all of us through our career, especially in the ER. Shit like that, where you have to like approach it from a totally different way.
It's not an easy job. Like I think,
But you have to manipulate.
yeah, there's a lot of
To
like
get them.
you're just constantly dealing with like subterfuge and just different angles. You got to play people, and it's like you have somebody who's like crashing on you, and people don't believe you.
Yeah,
Because it's not easy.
it's no, it's not easy, and but there was a time where it wasn't easy, but you got paid a lot of money, a lot. You could go on as many vacations as you want. Your accounts just kept going up because you went out to dinner, and a really expensive dinner was $50, and gas was less than $1 a gallon. It was $1 a gallon, and everything was just so cheap. Houses. I bought a really nice house for $300,000
Yeah.
back in the early 2000s, and now that house is $800,000, $900,000.
I'm glad you brought that up because I'm living this right now in Dallas. So,
Oh yeah, Dallas expensive market.
yeah, it's like LA out here. And it's like, it's not, I mean, it's a nice city, but it's not that nice. I mean, it's just like it's
It's going to get worse and worse.
it's like I don't know what people are so eager to move here. I mean, I came here for the jobs. I'm sure they did too. But how did we get into a situation where interest rates were artificially suppressed for such a long period of time? And then the people holding because right now the median buying age in DFW is like 50. Okay. Like that's not how you build a functioning society. Like you can't have young people trying to have like nobody wants to be living in an apartment into their 30s and 40s and then they don't have room for their kids. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Right.
the median buying age should be like 28, but people are not even close to being
Yeah.
in that
No.
ballpark. And it's
No,
like,
private equity is buying. Private
yeah,
equity is buying up all the homes and the I mean, dude, it's yeah. So I mean, again, incentives.
is that the
And
boomers?
well, look, yes, but I mean, I don't think it was like again. I don't think they were like knowingly screwing future generations. I think there's been a lot of kick the canism, and there's been a lot of, uh, we'll deal with future problems in the future, and a lot of reactionary governing by both sides of the political spectrum. I'm not very political. I equally abhor the right and the left, and I think um, they're all completely co-opted by financial interests and even larger behind the scenes network of the true masters of the universe.
Yep. Yeah,
And
that's kind of where I'm at.
yeah, so I mean, like, I think that um, over a long period of time, it it's been recognized. These are not dumb people, and the people who control the finances. I think ever since Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, there is no reason that that they needed to not print money and not create and not live wildly beyond our means and create like the higher standard of living in the world by basically stealing from the rest of the world. I mean, it's Triffin's dilemma, right? Like you have to outsource dollars to the world if you're and debase your own currency if you are the reserve currency. This is a well-known phenomenon. And it's happened to 49 of 50 of the last empires. When you become or of the last, reserve currencies, you can look this stuff up. This is like historical fact. This is not opinion. Uh, every fiat currency has failed, and fiat just means by decree. It just means paper money, not backed by anything. So before 1971, our dollars were backed by gold, and theoretically or silver. Like you could go in and exchange money for actual gold or silver, and the mechanism wasn't that easy. Like you wouldn't go in with a dollar and say, okay, give me a dollar of silver, but you could do it. And it was the whole system, the money was backed by gold. And in 1971, the United States dollar came off the gold standard and became a total, just, trust us, bro, IOU piece of paper, with a Federal Reserve note, an IOU. And once that happened, you didn't have to keep it pegged to gold any longer. And the value of the dollar could go straight to zero. And what that means is more and more and more dollars flood the system and asset prices explode. So if and wages stagnate, and everything that has happened in the last 40 or 50 years um, is because of that. And so, this long period of post-war stability and peace and, and Pax Americana and like all this, great life that people had. Um, the moment it came off in the early 70s by Nixon, that created this crazy situation where we're going to just blow the biggest bubble over the coming decades, where we're going to have the most fun and be the best country and be the richest country in the world. and we'll have slave labor in all these other countries in Malaysia pay for it. And that works until it doesn't, because at some point, things come due. And they came due in 2008 and 2009 when we defaulted. We actually defaulted as a country with the great financial crisis and the subprime crisis. And since then, it's been like a zombie, artificial kind of. It's like kick the can down the road.
Yeah.
And this is, and
That's
now
what
we're watching
scares
the
me,
whole
man.
empire.
That is what scares me. I know you've obviously read the Ray Dalio, the recent book. He's written several books.
Yes.
The one where he talks about that graph and then the pages that follow it, like where he's talking about
Everyone should read it.
are super important to kind of psychologically prepare yourself for the next 20 years. Because there's not, I think we've kicked the can for so long that it's pretty much irreparable, which brings me to my next question. We can kind of tie together some of these concepts. Like, what if I'm a young doctor and I realize that basically medicine in the United States is so messed up incentive-wise that you almost have to just start a new country and start over. What if, and I'm not being like joking when I say this, should a young doctor who's unmarried and no attachments, should they just move to El Salvador and open up a direct pay clinic and everything in Bitcoin? Or if you're a pathologist, contract directly with your surgeons and oncologists and only accept Bitcoin?
I mean, it's hard because your family is here and your friends are here. And I mean, and it's still America. And, I don't know if it's easy to move to it. Yeah, if you could go and live like a king and deliver healthcare and be very happy. And, I mean, there's not a lot of, if I was a young doctor and, I think part of the problem is a lot of young doctors are married, they have kids. So you're already behind the eight ball. You want to buy a house, you want to buy a nice car, you've got this huge student loan. I mean, you're effed because you're trading your time for money for ever less. You're trading ever more time for ever less money. There is no way out of the hamster wheel. So yeah, if you're young and single and you can move to a different country or live in a small apartment and rent and just barrel as much money as you can, 30% into Bitcoin, 30% into gold and silver, 30% into stocks, and live off 10% of your income. I would do that. I would try and save as much money as you can because they're going to blow the blow off top here, is, I don't know if they're going to be able to kick the can again, but Trump wants to drop interest rates 300 basis points. Like if they get what he wants and if stable coins become, dollarization of the world, I mean, we're on the cusp of like just an incredible wealth transfer. I mean, there's always opportunity as things fall apart. And,
I see.
I think that if you're saving in Bitcoin, gold and silver, real assets, what we're witnessing now, houses aren't going up in value. House has the same value it does now as it did 20 years ago or 100 years ago. Like the house has the same value to a human being. What's happening is the dollar is crashing. So it's taking more and more dollars to buy the home. And it seems like the value is going up because the value of your work and the time you spend working is going down because wages are not going up with at the same rate of the inflation of assets. So it's a real problem because everybody thinks, the price of the house has doubled, but no, the currency that's being measured in is absolutely being decimated. The dollar has lost 99.8% of its value since 1971. It might be 95% since 1971, but 98% since the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But the one thing we know that's going to happen from all previous empiric collapses is that assets are going to maintain their value and be store of value. Now, Bitcoin is unique because it is, how many times throughout human history do you get a new asset class? Completely novel. Like we're talking stocks,
That's a
debt
really
like
positive way of
bonds.
looking at it. Um,
Almost never, right? Like
yeah.
once every 1,000 years, you get a whole new asset class. So Bitcoin is its own brand new asset class, and it's a black hole that would be sucking. So it needs to be assimilated, and it's a black hole sucking from every other asset class as they diversify and recalibrate. Because now you have a digital asset, this is the first time in human history. This is the first time in our lifetimes, or the last 100 years, that we have a new asset class. Uh, So that's why it's so volatile, but it's also why it's going to $10 million a coin. So in the most likely scenario, or zero. Okay, nah.
Well, you have reaffirmed some of the stuff that I had been thinking about like 5 to 10 years ago when I kind of like saw the payments in medicine continuing to go down, because I am living that kind of lifestyle where I just live pretty cheaply
Yeah.
and I just accept, I just take the L. I know that the lifestyle of 1990s doctors is not the lifestyle today. And if you try to make it that lifestyle, you're just digging yourself further into this rat race, this hamster wheel where you have to work more and more and more, and your dollar is becoming worth less and less and less. Whereas I think that time is the best asset that you have. So pick a specialty the best you can, allows you the time to live, and then save your
Yeah.
money. Be
Well
do,
said.
do the types of things that you have done. You're about 10 years ahead of me. Happy belated birthday, by the way. I know you published.
Well, and here's the other thing, Chuck. Now imagine this: you're being paid in dollars that the value's collapsing. That's fact. The dollars you're being paid, so all the dollars that you got paid from, in 2020, they're worth 75 cents on the dollar right now.
Yeah.
So the money that you're being paid in is just being liquidated. It's just,
So
so,
actually, that's my
so
question for you.
yeah, if you took your salary in Bitcoin, though, I know a lot of doctors right now worth $100 million, because back in 2017, 2016, 2018, they put all their money into Bitcoin and all their salaries into Bitcoin. And what do you think has happened? Bitcoin was, $2,000 a coin, $4,000 a coin. And if you're being paid hundreds of thousands, and guess what? We're still extremely early with Bitcoin. It's like less than 1% adopted. It has massive market fit. It's like, so I'm not saying to be, that quote unquote risky, but I view dollars and being paid in dollars as risky.
No, I do
Secondly,
too, man.
yeah,
I mean,
like it's going down. It's like you are knowingly being paid in an inferior currency that is losing value, quickly.
you can critique my strategy. Feel free to critique this, but I've only been in private practice for like 3.5 years now.
Yeah.
And I've just been trying to maximize my pre-tax vehicles and go straight into index funds. And then the cash that like I do have, I just buy index funds as much as I can. I try to keep as little cash on hand as possible, including in my HSA.
Mhm.
And I'm just speaking for this little window of time since you know, I I really wanted to buy my camper, and now I'm kind of saving up for the next, like, buying land. Like just figuring out where we're eventually going to live.
Yeah, I bought a bunch of land in Kentucky. It's
Oh, I saw that. Yeah. Yeah. What was the driver behind that? Because you're in Denver,
oh my
right?
God. Well, I'm a climber of 35 years, and now climbing's in the Olympics, and climbing is blowing up. I mean, and the Red River Gorge in Kentucky is like one of the number one spots in the world for rock climbing. And it is so beautiful and so, oh, it's just incredible. These incredible cliffs and hollers and it's so much fun for any level of climbing, which is such a healthy outdoor, activity you could do with your family. And then they got side by sides and zip lines and mountain biking and golf and so it's like this just epic place. It's also one of the poorest counties in the country, so yeah, you can still buy houses in Kentucky for super cheap, and it's like just a no brainer. And so we bought a bunch of land. I already have a rental cabin in Kentucky, and we're building more cabins, and this land for sale there, sits on the edge of these cliffs, and it's just so beautiful. So, I'm helping the guy who bought all this land and did a deal with climbers so that we could develop more rock climbing routes. He's a big developer there, and so I'm helping him, sell land and stuff just by referring other docs of people to him. So, it's just incredible,
That's awesome.
and I love it. I love it there.
Hey, Noah, I want to thank you so much for your time, man. This has been a really
Yeah.
illuminating conversation. I also want to be respectful of your time.
Oh, it's been great for me as well, Chuck. It's made me think of a lot of things. I've taken notes, and I'm gonna be writing and thinking about some of this stuff too.
So, Dr. Noah Kaufman just self-published this book. The title of the book is Self-Bitcoinization, A Philosophy of Bitcoin. You can buy it on Amazon. You can, right?
Yeah, you can. The hard copy is on there. It's like gold embossed. It's $100. It's a coffee table book. I'll have a cheaper soft cover coming out in the next coming months, maybe.
Okay. Well, check out Dr. Kaufman's book, and thanks a lot, man. And I hope to cross paths with you again.
Chuck, I can't wait to have a beer with you and see where we're at in the coming years. You're a great guy, and love your podcast.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the 3 Deeper Cuts podcast, the lifestyle podcast for the practicing surgical pathologist from deep in the foggy trenches of medicine, where formaldehyde is used. I like mine on the rocks. We covered a lot of topics: rock climbing, Bitcoin, mindset, energism, med school, resilience, self-improvement, minimalism. All of those things can help you in the trenches of medicine. As a med student, resident, early career doc. If you take away one thing from this podcast, I think it would be minimalism. Whether or not you agree with the current payment system in medicine, things are not the same that they were in the 80s and 90s. My recommendation to you is to live below your means, save and invest, carve out 2% of your annual investments for recurring Bitcoin purchases. So if it goes to zero, you're going to be fine. If it goes to 10 million, you're going to be very fine. So thanks for listening. Check out at Noah Kaufman MD on X. Link in the description to his website and to purchase his book. It's a very nice coffee table book, but you'll actually read it because the ideas in it are uplifting. And if you're in a little bit of a rut, as a lot of us can get into in the day-to-day grind of various medical practices, it's an uplifting vibe. And you can keep referring back to it whenever you need a little pick-me-up, or if you just want to learn more about Bitcoin. There's links. there's parts of it that are kind of like a workbook as well. And there's a lot of cross-referenced X accounts and websites and podcasts that you can kind of use this book as like a jumping off point to become more Bitcoin literate. So until next time, be well and stay curious. Chuck G out.